I've said to people, it isn't just about protecting religious freedom, it's about protecting all free expression. And that includes your right to protest on something that matters to you, your right to engage in debate and not go down the road that we've seen in the United Kingdom, where police are knocking on people's doors over things they've posted on social media because someone took offense to it.
That's right. Hi, I'm Mike. Bill C-9 represents both a seismic and incremental shift in the ongoing attack on free speech in Canada. The draconian measures taken in countries such as Australia and the UK have reached levels of censorship unseen since the end of the Cold War and appear to be directly on the horizon here. In this video, Minister of Parliament Andrew Lawton discusses the impact of C-9 on faith communities and why all of Canada should be alarmed. Have a listen. So you mentioned spiritual. So Bill C-9. Obviously, Canada has become a much more secular nation, and that's a planned thing. We have our media and our schools and frankly, government policies that are moving it in a certain direction. The concern, obviously, from Christian groups, from religious groups about the hindrance to free speech. What about, though, those that are hostile to religion or are completely ambivalent towards religion? Why should they be opposing or concerned about Bill C-9?
So I'll give two answers. One is just at the fundamental level, freedom of expression for one is freedom of expression for all.
Right.
And your right to practice your faith freely is the same as someone else's right to criticize religion, all of which has to be protected, even if it makes us uncomfortable, as long as someone is not abusing that freedom to make threats, to incite things that we have already very clearly delineated in law. And those laws have generally been working when they are enforced. And that gets us to where I think C-9 has retread on something without dealing with an enforcement problem on people that have, gone out of their way to harass, to obstruct, to do all these other things. The other aspect of it is that we look at what faith communities do in this country on a regular basis beyond preaching. You look at how churches and synagogues and mosques run food programs, how Christian charities and other religious charities, provide housing needs. You look at what faith leaders do on a day-to-day basis, diagnosing and meeting head-on some of the really key battles in society. Faith leaders are hearing what our youth are struggling with. They're hearing about families that are going through breakdowns, and they're providing an answer to that in a way that government can't, or in some cases shouldn't. And the only reason that faith groups are able to do this work is because they're motivated by their core religious beliefs. And we can't, as a society, take the benefits of this, take the philanthropy that faith organizations do, without also protecting the core beliefs and values that are underpinning that. And that is the right to freely practice your faith, to freely read from your scriptures, and to debate what those scriptures mean internally as people of faith. And to be clear on C-9, this is not a bill that will ban religion, but it's a bill that will move the line on what constitutes hate in a way that makes it very difficult for people to understand, especially when preaching or discussing subjects that are difficult in society, things about whether it's geopolitics, things about gender and sexuality, things that people will have a range of beliefs and ideas on. And we have always understood the importance of protecting that religious freedom. And C-9, if passed in its current form, will upset that balance. And I've said to people, it isn't just about protecting religious freedom, it's about protecting all free expression. And that includes your right to protest on something that matters to you, your right to engage in debate and not go down the road that we've seen in the United Kingdom, where police are knocking on people's doors over things they've posted on social media because someone took offense to it. And they're not being charged with it, they're just being put on notice. And that's something that has happened, again, in a free Western democratic country. So we need to be on guard always about things that move the line a little bit in the wrong direction.
So if, let's say that Canada was able to go 100% secular and the religious communities were removed in whatever way from society, could the federal government stand up and pick up all the places that the churches were going to leave behind? Could they step in and do it all?
No, and it's interesting. Cardis has done some tremendous work on this, which is a faith-based think tank, about how, when taxes go up, charitable giving goes down.
Right.
And so there's just a fundamental thing of the more government tries to do, the less people give and do in their own lives. And again, the tougher the economy is, the more jobs people have to work, the less volunteerism there is. So we see all of these different trade-offs. And, sometimes it's not a dollar for dollar comparison. And I'll use refugees as a great example. Every single study that's been done on refugee resettlement has said that the best outcomes for refugees are ones who are privately sponsored.
Wow.
Which means a family or a faith institution or a community group took them in and supported them, rather than them going through the government channel.
Right.
And that's true of Syrian refugees, it's true of Ukrainian refugees, because again, community is the one thing government can't and isn't really positioned to offer.
Right.
So that's, I think, where government couldn't pick up the pieces. And as far as secularism, I mean, people should be very concerned about the direction that Quebec is going.
Okay.
Because Quebec is actually, as a matter of policy, trying to purge the public square of religion.
Right.
And we've seen bans on public prayer, we've seen bans on religious symbols and religious garb in the public service. And in doing so, they're trying to say that, yeah, you can keep your faith, but I don't want to see it.
Right.
And that's not what faith is. People of faith want to share it. They want to benefit from it. And again, the Quebec government's not prepared to fill the gaps that all of these faith organizations will leave if they aren't able to exist.
So faith communities being involved in politics is a pretty hot button issue, not just within politics, but within the faith communities themselves. What would your message be to faith communities when it comes to being involved in politics in some of these issues and overall?
So I think there's a difference between being partisan and advocating for your self-interest.
Okay.
And, the charitable status issue is a great example. Like if you're the pastor of a church, you're also the CEO of an organization that is affected by a potential policy change. It's not being partisan, or I would even argue politically, to write a letter to a member of parliament and say, I don't think you should do this and here's why.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And on Bill C9, this was the same thing. I met with a number of faith leaders locally and nationally about this, and some of them said, I'm not comfortable getting political. And I'm saying it's not about telling people how to vote.
Right.
It's about telling people that this will affect us as a unit and as a group, in the same way that every other group and group of individuals and every other individual could do that. And, people often use this term separation of church and state, but they forget that has to be a two-way street.
Right.
We also have to protect the state from intruding into what faith communities are allowed to practice on a regular basis. And I think any faith organization has the right to stand up and say, well, no, we don't support this policy, and here's why. And charities have that same right in law in Canada, and that is not constituting them being political.
Yeah.
It's advocating on an issue that affects them.
Sounds great.